What is up, everybody? Isaac here with Civil Engineering Academy. Excited to be with you on another podcast episode. You're going to love this one. This was awesome. It kind of blew my mind away at where we're headed in the future. But we're talking about digital twins today and the creation of them. And in fact, we have a demo for you. So today I bring on some awesome guests. I bring on Darrell Keach. He's the business system manager for the Port of Corpus Christi. I also bring on Rex Hansen, who's the principal project manager at Esri. And together they worked to create a digital twin of the Port of Corpus Christi in Texas. And this thing is phenomenal. And it's hard to describe exactly what is all there. But once you see it, your mind will be blown and the ideas will start flowing as to where this stuff can go in other industries. But for civil engineers that are out there, you could apply this to many things. The ideas are limitless. And Rex and Darrell spell it all out for us today. You got to see this demo. So if you're watching this on our YouTube channel or our website, that's going to be the best place to watch this. Audio is also good as well, but to get the real visual effect, you want to check out the video. So I'm going to point you there to check things out. So today we're going to talk about digital twins. We're going to talk about this awesome project at the Port of Corpus Christi and how Esri helped to create a digital twin that shows real-time data, 3D and 4D. Time and space is also involved in here, of showing a port and how ships interact with each other and how you can build a digital twin that shows all this information at your fingertips, including a lot of other stuff. So I think you'll be blown away. I was blown away. I'm going to shut up. Let's get to my interview with Rex and Darrell. It's going to be coming up right after this. So see you in a minute. All right, Darrell and Rex, we are rocking and rolling. Thanks for joining me today on the Civil Engineering Academy podcast. Appreciate you both being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yep, thank you.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you. It sounds like you've got a really awesome project detailing and making a digital twin of the Port of Corpus Christi. And I know as part of that, you're working with Esri. There's probably a lot to unpack there. But before we even dive into those kind of questions, why don't you both give us an introduction of yourselves and a little bit of background? And I guess we'll start with Darrell.
Well, thanks. Darrell Keach. I'm the business systems manager for the Port of Corpus Christi in the IT department. And, I often struggle with explaining to people what is business systems. So, it's systems with a dollar sign, our financial system, the software that runs our harbor master, and then a lot of the applied technology falls underneath. So I get to, play and develop a lot of new tools and have been assisting our GIS department with upgrading our GIS system to an enterprise Esri system as well. That ties into what we're going to discuss today.
Well, before we jump to Rex, could you give the listeners kind of an idea of the size of Port of Corpus Christi and like how it operates a little bit? Because it's like, it's big.
Yes. So the Port of Corpus Christi is about halfway on the Texas coast between Houston and Mexico. We are primarily a liquid-based port. So we move petrochemical-related hydrocarbons back and forth. We don't do containers. And then we also do some wind blades and agricultural products. When it comes to specifically liquid products and crude exports, we are the largest port in the United States. A lot of the energy that comes through the Port of Corpus Christi.
Big place. Okay. Well, thanks for the quick explainer there, Rex. Let's get to your introduction with Esri. Give us a little bit of background.
Thanks, Isaac. Rex Hansen. I work with Esri out of Southern California, our headquarters in Redlands, California. I'm the product manager for our native and game engine SDKs, developer tools for individuals, developers building out native or game engine based applications. We have 2+ support both Unity and Engine. I've been working with Esri for almost 3 decades now. And lately, over the last 10 years, I've been really focused on building out immersive applications, working with digital twins and in 3D space. And really exciting to see some of these workflows come to life and be useful across multiple industries. So really excited to see also what Darrell and his team are putting together too, and putting it into practice. So
that's amazing. Rex, could you talk a little bit about using a game engine? Like, when did that come into play? Is this relatively new? How long has that been around? And is
Yeah.
everybody wanting a digital twin now?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I feel like just in GIS, we've had these transitions within just working with geospatial or mapping data in general. And so as we've gone into a more sort of from an analog into a digital age, and as we've moved from, let's say, paper and pen or paper and pencil to a more digital approach, we've seen a lot of organizations move out of their more hand sort of, I guess, more um, paper-oriented workflows to a more digital work using a system of record like a GIS to manage their geospatial data, not just on the back end, but being able to deliver that so that they could share, update, change, and work in real time. And so being able to transition from paper to digital was important, but a lot of times that was in 2D, right? So it was in these sort of a flat map in paper to a flat map on a digital screen. And what we've seen, of course, that's great, and it makes it more manageable, easier to use, and more distributable and more shareable, and it accelerates a lot of the workflows when working with geospatial information. But what we've noticed maybe in the last 10 years is that there is still an abstraction that has to take place between 2D and 3D or reality, right? 4D, sort of space and time. And so trying to remove or reduce the abstraction required for staff members, for organizations to be able to transition from or understand what's happening in the real world through a digital representation of that has really accelerated this approach to investing in a 3D GIS, right? Building out a digital twin. And it's not just for visualization, but it's also situational awareness for that real-time interaction. But then it's also for simulation workflows going forward. They want to take the investment that they've made in this digital GIS, move from 2D to 3D so it represents reality, add a time element to it, and then start investing in that workflow going forward to keep it up to date, but also then maybe basically add to, or at least I guess prototype on what they would like to do in the future, and then run simulations on it because it's cheaper to do in the digital space than to try and run those prototypes in the real world, to get a better handle on where they should go next. And so it's all about making better decisions, right? About what's happening now, what's happened in the past, and what will happen in the future. And so what's interesting is that as this move from, let's say, 2D GIS to 3D GIS took place, I'd say this started in earnest about 10 years ago, a little under 10 years ago. At the same time, organizations were looking for technology that would provide this immersive visualization in a way that provided a lifelike experience with sort of real world physics, animation, things that looked more immersive and felt more immersive, so that their staff members, their organizations, or the organization staff members had a better understanding of what they were working with and the decisions they needed to make. And so game engines, for better or worse, they've had, the industry leading game engines. And right now that's really Unity and Unreal Engine, or Epic Games Unreal Engine, have invested a lot of time in building out these immersive, high-powered visualization capabilities that target a variety of different devices that include high-end desktops, high-end systems, as well as like lightweight mobile devices and headsets. And they've also built out these, I'll say, simulated worlds, these simulated capabilities that needed to operate like the real world, but they didn't necessarily represent the real world. And so we saw this start to come together, I would say, in earnest in 2016. For better or worse, Microsoft released the HoloLens 2016. Mm-hmm. And what we saw was the extended reality. XR wasn't a term at the time, but they invented mixed reality at the time, and they invented that term. And it was really about augmenting your physical space with digital information that might be a small scale, let's say virtual tabletop, or it could be something that worked at a full scale. But it was designed to augment your physical world with business data, real world data that you could use and make decisions on and collaborate with others around. And once that landed and folks saw Microsoft really take a business approach and industry approach to extended reality, the best tools for providing that realism, that digital realism, were game engines. And so at the time it was Unity. And so Unity was a launch partner with Microsoft, and we actually demonstrated this on our plenary stage, our user conference plenary stage in 2016 to an audience of 15, almost 20,000. And so, and every industry was represented in that audience that worked with real world data, that worked with a GIS. So they were looking at ways to take advantage of their investment in 3D GIS, and that was one way to do it. And a game engine was what was powering that experience through immersiveness, through performance, and just the ability to target a variety of platforms. And since that time, we've seen other organizations and other industries try to take advantage of those benefits that a game engine provides, right? This high-powered immersive visualization, physics engines, animation systems, particle systems that provide this realism. And so it's really about building that real world digital twin, and not just making it look right, but also making it act right, so that it operates like the real world does. And so not just today, but in the future, if there's some sort of prototypical work you need to be able to introduce at some point. And so using that for things like high-powered visualization to make decisions, or real-time updates so that you can make better decisions, or simulation workflows to be able to decide how you'd like to make the best decision going forward. So game engines have entered into that space with the Port of Corpus Christi. I think they had the foresight to see that building out an immersive digital twin of the port and using game engine technology to really bring it to life, and working with a real world system of record, and of course the authority in that space is Esri, made sense. And it provided the best value for being able to enable their staff to be able to see what's happening and make decisions based upon what's happening in the field quickly and effectively, and really centralize that around one system instead of having multiple diverse decentralized systems of varying levels of quality, right? So I think that's one way to kind of bring it all together in one common operating picture.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks for kind of explaining that to us.
Cool.
Darrell, I'm curious on your end, what was the genesis for the need of a digital twin for Port of Corpus Christi? Like, why did you want? How did this all begin?
Various stages. Honestly, not sure I remember. Where it really got going was deciding to focus in on a security-based digital twin. So it was kicked around various ideas. When the term digital twin first came out, it was a buzzword. But if you asked anybody, what is the digital twin, or what is your idea of it, it wasn't definable. And so we pared it down to building and starting with the digital twin in our security space to identify a specific section of the port, and a use case to say, how can we take separate systems, combine it into one to provide something that, enhances the police department and what they do, and use that then as a stepping stone that'll eventually turn into a product for, lots of other departments throughout the port.
What has been the biggest benefit for you in using the digital twin?
Honestly, we're still figuring out the benefits. We just officially launched it right at the tail end of the year, and something that's new and different. It's taking people some time to kind of adopt it and figure it out. But in short, it's providing a single pane of glass for our users that before the digital twin would have to have 3 or 4 different applications open with data that had some connection, but to put those connections together required a person to look at the screen, look at all the different applications, and combine those together. Whereas now in the digital twin, the software is doing that and presenting it in an interface that looks like the objects really look like in the world.
Yeah, I'm excited to see this. For those that are going to be watching this one, we got a little demo that's coming up soon, so stay tuned for that. Those that are listening to this, you'll just have to jump on our video, YouTube, check it out. But I'm curious, this is maybe a question for both of you. Maybe you could tackle it one at a time, but what was the biggest challenge here of developing and implementing a digital twin? I mean, was it getting the data? This is the software side of it? And I guess, Darrell, what in your eyes was the biggest challenge?
Well, the biggest challenge first was paring it down to what is realistic. What can we realistically define and build, and not try to boil the ocean? But specifically, one of the technical challenges was water. It still is. So, if you're building a digital port or anything with a roadway, any imagery is going to capture moving objects. in a static position, but they're not there, the moment they drive off or going down the shared channel. So one of our biggest challenges was figuring out how to accurately display water across the space without flooding, land areas and, hiding essentially base imagery, which I'll be able to show you some examples of here whenever you're ready. That's probably been one of the biggest challenges so far. Something as simple as figuring out how to accurately.
Sounds good. Rex, why don't you take that over? What was the biggest challenge on your side of this?
That's a good question. I think just to get us off the ground in integration with game engines, we could really bring real world data to game engines. We had to work with both Unity and Epic Games to deliver a framework or a foundation for delivering double precision, high precision geospatial information to a game engine to be able to retain that precision and that accuracy. And so we worked with both organizations, both industry leaders, and we were able to work with them to make sure that we had a platform or a foundation that could honor the precision of real world data. And once we had that framework in place and that context, that meant that we could build out a canvas that then other organizations or customers could build and work with real world data with confidence in a variety of different coordinate spaces and coordinate systems, but being able to really blend their real world information reliably, confidently was the first hurdle. And so once we had that in place, and that was in 2020 into 2021, once we had that, we knew that once we had that available in production, we could deliver a plugin that would allow for direct access to geospatial information in a game engine that could then be used with reliability. So that was our key first piece. Now, there's always challenges going forward with being able to access large volumes of, in many cases, fairly extensive geospatial information. So, a 3D representation or a digital twin of almost any region, can be quite complex. And so being able to manage large quantities, terabytes, petabytes of data effectively for visualization as well as analysis is key. And so we constantly look for ways to enhance and optimize, not just be able to create that data and then deliver it, but also then be able to visualize and use that in the game engine. So that's kind of an ongoing process for us as we see more greater amounts of 3D data gathered and captured and then disseminated in some way for use in this capacity. So that's an ongoing challenge we continue to iterate on. But at this stage, the first stage was actually having a canvas or a context for us to reliably display and utilize geospatial information. Interestingly, game engines were really a single precision focused. It was all about performance. And so we had to bring in sort of the idea that, hey, performance is great, but we also need accuracy and precision.
All right.
And so we had to combine those together. That took some time.
Did that come from, I'm assuming you had to do some sort of survey work on this. So were you getting LiDAR data and bringing that in to create your real world dimensions?
So in the case of our digital twin, we're combining imagery, not LiDAR yet. The three key pieces of information is imagery, geospatial items, along with that, as well as our computer-aided dispatch system from our police department that provides the location of where incidents are happening and where police units are. And then we used AIS, which is an international ship tracking system that pretty much shows in real time where every vessel is in and around the world, as well as provides a data set of what that vessel is, as far as, is it a tanker, a cargo carrier, what's its size, etc. That's where we've used for this initial build, but we're looking at combining in other types of radar, LiDAR in future states, depending on the use case and the problem we're trying to solve.
Awesome. And just maybe as a follow-up, was AI, machine learning, those are the big buzzwords, but how was that used in developing this as well?
Yes. So we're using some machine learning when it comes to displaying the movement of vessels. So the AIS signal is not a continuous update every 2, 3, 5 seconds. It can beacon, depending on the vessel, anywhere from 30 seconds to 4 minutes. And so we've used some machine learning in this initial build to essentially show the movement of that vessel in real time where it would be going, So it's not just teleporting across the screen between those intermittent updates.
Man, there's a lot to take in. I'm excited. Let's dive into your demo. I want to see this thing. So, and others are, I'm sure, itching to see it too. So, Rex, you've got the ability to share your screen. I believe there should be a present button there, and we can get this thing up and showing.
I think Darrell, you're going to demo?
Yes.
Yep, cool.
Or Darrell's got it. Someone's got it. There we go.
Right. So, generally, when you look at most digital twins or any type of other similar application, this is a rough idea of what you see. Top-down view. I've turned a few things off at the moment, and I'll turn them on as I explain them. So you can see throughout the port the base imagery. You see some ships. You see some labels here of facilities. And then I'll come in and start turning in vessels on the labels. So if we look down here, we can see some tugboats that are moving through the port. Gives you vessel information about the name, heading, course, size. But wait a minute, this is supposed to be a 3D digital twin. So if we flip into 3D mode, we can zoom in and see that a tugboat looks just like a tugboat. The machine learning is what's making it look like it's moving in near real time.
That's real time.
Valley is just kind of circling back there. Yes, if you were standing on the shore, you would see these actual tugboats sitting right here. And if you were out in the Corpus Christi Bay front, you would have just seen this oil tanker leave the port of Corpus Christi, headed out across the bay.
Ooh, that's awesome.
So this is in real time.
That is awesome information. So you can see every ship in the world because you've got that map. You know what's coming and going.
So I'll jump back to something what Rex was saying about challenges in dealing with the size of data. So we have also limited this to about a 50 square mile area on the port. So Fender, or even the state of Texas, it's just the port area proper, because it is a large data set. And there's we're technical decisions about how much data is stored on the device, how much is streamed, and because all of those affect performance, size, space. And so a lot of the data right now, what we've done is these building models that you see, like the aquarium here, this data is actually stored on the end user device, so that way we could minimize the streaming footprint, because there are areas of the port that have weak cell signal. So right now it is a fat application, but that is by design to bring in these data sets and load them on the device. Well, we were talking earlier about some of the challenges. So like here, we've actually got a bridge that's being built. So when this base imagery was done, you can see it just barely extended over the channel and these shadows. But that stuff looks like today is more along the lines of we can turn on water. So we reversed NOAA here. We unparted the Red Sea, so to speak, and we turned on this water layer that's provided by the game engine. And so it's hiding that imagery underneath, and it's making water look like water. The waves look like sand, and to provide that immersive experience of what does it really look like in and around the port. And then one of the other things that using these tools allows us to do is see the future. So we actually can look and turn on to see what is our new bridge going to look like when it's opened next month, actually, here in and around the port. What's that footprint? If you're on a vessel, wait a minute, you said on a vessel? Yeah, we can actually jump on a vessel within this tool. And if you're a captain, you can see, well, what's my view going to be like with this new bridge in and around the port.
This is amazing.
We've taken a lot of joy in creating these things, and eventually future stages will include, when I click on the facility, I'll know the details of maybe what commodities, potentially how much revenue that dock generated. when it comes to those types of assets, right now what we're doing is, and I'm going to turn on, say, some simulated incidents here. So let's assume that this trespasser, and whether this event was really a trespasser or some other type of event in and around the port. So we're bringing in information here on the left side of this info card from our dispatch system that gives you updates of this call. And then because we're geospatially referenced, this red circle is actually 1,000-foot radius from where the dispatchers dropped this pin or the address of the location is. So now we, using the software, can build a list of what are all the assets within that 1,000-foot radius. So I know that, the dock and these other facilities are nearby. What if this was, instead of a trespasser, say some sort of fire or spill, and there was a cloud drifting? What assets are potentially within that drift? There's maybe some better examples down here. Let's jump to and look at this simulated spill at this other facility, and we can see the Haskell and the Boyne and what vessels are within that 1,000-foot radius of the stock. So if I'm a security person, I know exactly who I may need to contact in coordination with the harbor master office. If units were in route, I would see the police units that were assigned in route, as well as at the Haskell. If I click on it, now I'm finding updated information about that vessel. It's actually underway. It's moving, what direction, the speed. I even know the call sign of the vessel. So if I need to call them on the radio, I know how to get a hold of them.
Wow.
So, these are all things that without the digital twin, those pieces of data are available, but they're all in different systems. You don't get one view of what's going on in a situation. This is providing that comprehensive situational awareness. And, the icons and renderings of the vessels look like they're supposed to. So, you can see this tugboat, actually looks like a tugboat. It's got a barge in front of it, giving you more information that you don't have to go look up. And many of the modern tools that are out here right now that display this information may show just a polygon of a tugboat. It doesn't show you what style or what type, or that, what does it look like with a barge. You get a better feel for what the data is as we move down lucky us. So here's actually two vessels that just passed each other, one leaving, one coming in the port. We can easily see what's going on. What do these vessels look like? You can see actually that they're cargo tankers. I don't have to go, look at another system. It's one an oil tanker, one cargo. All of that information is right here. Actually, and then this one is passing a tugboat with a barge. All of that's a game engine, which to accurately represent would be because essentially people eat with their eyes. That your grabs just by the visual any system. As I go back here and I turn this incident back on, we can see there's tugs, and it looks like this Captain Brantley vessel may be entering my 1,000-foot radius. So, again, just from georeferencing data, there's so much value that can be gleaned.
I have a lot of questions
from what we're displaying.
Sounds like it eats a lot of bandwidth.
So it depends what you mean by bandwidth. So actually, from a network perspective, as I was mentioning earlier, we're streaming very little data to the device. The building renderings, the base maps, a lot of that's already saved on the device or the base map stream and the location stream. But these 3D renderings are all part of the application load. So we're not having to stream that rendering every time and recreate it. And that was one of the draws of using the Unity game engine, was that it allowed our developers to build once and deploy many places. Unity is well deployed throughout mobile devices and mobile gaming. And so it was very easy to take what's the window application and ported over to an iOS application. So if I pull this up on an iPad, it's going to look just like it does here. Yet it's going to take advantage of all of the graphics and everything that Apple has built on their game platform to render these items back and forth.
So another question I have is, it seems like you can display as much information as you want to. Can you also restrict access? So certain groups, I mean, this opens up the door to like virtually all your departments wanting to jump in here and look at information almost. But can you also limit the amount of information as well?
Absolutely. So knowing when we built this that this was not going to be just a security product, we built that in from the ground up of being able to segment data from different users. So if I come here and set up, say, somebody from our trade development or sales department, they're not going to have the security clearance to see where these incidents are happening, but they have value in seeing where the ships are, and is there vacant property that they can display to a potential customer. But it's very easy to segment off secure items that they're not allowed to see. And so that's built in through actually through Active Directory and the Microsoft side. So at the very core, security has been key to this project. We knew that when we were going to start combining these data sets into one application, knowledge is power. It's good for the people that want to have it, but we don't want it to get into the wrong hands. So this application is actually what's known as CJIS compliant, which stands for Criminal Justice Information System, which are very specific standards, both state and national, of how this data is secured. And so it's actually triple encrypted. It's encrypted before it's sent, it's encrypted in transit, and then any of the data that's on the end user device is also encrypted to keep the data secure. It requires multi-factor authentication to get into the application as well.
That's amazing. I'm looking at the bridge. So how did you coordinate with the engineering group that was designing that bridge? Were you able to get plans from them? And then when it's like all built, will you throw in the as-builts? Like how did you get that?
So what we currently have built between both bridges is just based off the designs that we have. The bridges are both owned or built by the state. We asked, pretty please, can we have some building drawings of the new bridge? And they politely said no. It's a design build. So they said technically the plans don't exist to give to you. And the contractor that they've used apparently doesn't have to provide the as-built back to the state until 30, 45 days after the project's closed. So we went to what publicly has the state and the developer or the builder of the bridge produced in the media. And our contractor built that representation from publicly available sources. So it's not exactly right, but that's okay. We didn't let perfect get in the way of good. And the same thing with the existing bridge that you can see here in the foreground. So what I did here is I jumped back on this vessel as it's transiting through the port to get an idea of, hey, if I'm on this ship, what can I see? So, I can look around, I can see various buildings, and various port facilities. I can see the upcoming bridges. What does that approach look like? So even from the people that are on this ship, months ago, we're able to get an idea, what is this visual going to look like? Many of the people on these ships use visual representation and objects like buildings and bridges as line of sight for, where they should be in their party make turns in and around the channel.
It was amazing. I'm blown away. I think this is awesome.
So additionally, we can do the opposite. So we have a new bridge that, we can't get up on yet. What's it going to look like from that bridge? What can people see from the new bridge? What's it going to look like? Well, there are actual security concerns of where this new bridge is located, what facilities may be, within closer view. Those are all some of the things just that we found as use cases for this, sir. And frankly, we're still finding more.
That is amazing. Rex, I had a question for you. What's as you were getting a tour of this, what's something you're most proud of in helping on this as we're looking at this? And then as a follow-up to that, what other arenas do you see this being used in terms of like civil engineering? Because my mind's kind of going all over the place, but
Yeah, I have to admit, so the work that the Port of Corpus Christi did with the Acceleration Agency, which is the contractor that built out the Esri partner that built out the solution, there were a number of different challenges. A few of those were with just the quantity of data. As Darrell mentioned, trying to refine that to just a workspace or an area of interest was key, but also then leveraging some of the benefits of cache structures, specifications for being able to store and distribute 3D data or just 2D and 3D data, and being able to take advantage of that. And so working directly with the Acceleration Agency to help refine our plugins and our product to more effectively meet the use cases that Darrell and his team at the port have outlined, whether it's a desktop system in the back office or it's an iPad in the field, making sure that we can support a variety of different form factors. And so there's quite a bit of work that happened there, and that was great to see that. The other part there was some of the work that the Acceleration Agency did here to provide that realistic experience around water and the shorelines, I think was key. And I think that's where, Darrell's kind of focused on a few of the shorelines here, which is he enabled the sort of the realistic water, again, providing that photorealistic experience, that lifelike experience that looks and acts like the real world is important for folks that want to become immersed. And that's really what immersion is about, right? Something a digital representation that looks and acts like the real world. And so some of the work that the Acceleration Agency did there to replace those waterways with really an elevation or terrain that then they could fill with a realistic looking water source or volumetric water that looked like water as you're navigating through it, and especially on the shorelines, which was a bit challenging, and also removing some of the pre-existing content that was in imagery, right? So you had existing piers and boats and other things too. So kind of overlaying that as well. So you had the added effect of covering some of those sort of pre-existing objects. And so that was important. And I think something that added extra, especially if you're dealing with a maritime situation or you're dealing with a maritime port, that's important for your water to look and act and function realistically, right? For that immersive experience. Now, what's interesting here is that the Acceleration Agency, in working with Port of Corpus Christi, we're building out a solution that can be reused for other ports, certainly other maritime ports, but it could be used for other transportation hubs, airports, railway stations, right? So it's the same concept, the same logic can be used in other capacities in the transportation industry, certainly within AEC and planning, being able to see what's happening, the as-built today, archival information in the past, and then also looking forward to the future and being able to plan for what happens in the future as new structures or changes take place. I think that's important. Also planning for things like being able to dredge out this port. And in talking to Darrell, it sounds like there's a constant process of working with the subsurface, in this case, of course, it's port. So you're working with what's happening underwater, under the water surface, and making sure that the port is safe, is effective, is productive. And so being able to manage that, not just on land, but sort of in the water, is important as well. And so you need to start with a foundation, both land and offshore, and under the water is important. So having that foundation to work with and then be able to plan for those workflows, I think is important as well. And then see what the results are of those plans. So there's a lot of sensors that are out in the field. And I think it'd be interesting to hear what Darrell has to say about some of the future work that they plan to do, because I was excited to see obviously in the past and seeing this demonstration before, some of the additional sensors, working with video cameras, and then also working with AI to be able to predict, like Darrell mentioned before, predict whether or not there's going to be a collision, to be able to warn, vessels before things happen. Also being able to get better sort of bathymetry, actually, and be able to capture that through sonar, whether it's through some, through like a underwater drone or through other sensors, be able to capture what's happening, under the water, and so that they can plan more effectively for being able to maintain and curate the port going forward. It's just a great foundation for just continuing to enhance this going forward. I know now it's really focused on security, and that's port security, looking at other ways to be able to plan for different infrastructure projects going forward, but also then extending that beyond just port security and looking at other state and federal agencies, I think is important too, kind of plugging that into a larger system. I know it was interesting. We had a discussion before about, looking at other infrastructure capabilities or infrastructure management and maintenance and projects on the port and dealing with utilities, right? The movement of water and gas and electric. These boats are moving materials as well, right? So they're moving petroleum in some capacity. Like maybe we need to see where that's going and how that's moving through, port managed property. So I think there's a lot of opportunities in that space too, that don't just apply to the Port of Corpus Christi, but obviously other maritime ports and other transportation hubs. So a lot of opportunities here. And I think Darrell mentioned before, they're still trying to, wrap their head around, hey, now we've got all of this information in a central system. It's visually immersive. It's real time, providing a common operating picture for everyone to be able to react and make better decisions. How can we take it to the next level? What's the next phase? And that's always exciting to see how this becomes even more useful moving forward.
I'm blown away. I think it's awesome. This is amazing. If anyone hasn't seen it, definitely give this check the thing out.
So expand on what Rex was saying a little bit. Other industries. So one of the things where we started building this was to build something that could be used not only by other ports but other industries. This was partially grant funded, and it wasn't a requirement of the grant, but we knew we were on the bleeding edge of something here. So if you're a city, displaying where buses are, so compared to police units in the city, bus routes, utility vehicles, all of those items here, it doesn't have to be a port. The software that's built here is using standard APIs and can ingest any data set that someone may have. So whether that's, combining Esri-based data, and our next round is going to be bringing in data such as geological lines. So much of the port is inside city limits or outside city limits and multiple city limits. Our optics, which is what our digital twin is called, is about 50 square miles. And so it's across 2 counties, multiple cities. Well, when an incident happens, often it's important to know, is it inside or outside the city limits? So bringing in those geopolitical lines, or if there's, a fire in the port somewhere, what pipelines run around that area? So being able to accurately display where pipelines are. As we were discussing for disaster recovery, what does the utility system in restoring, power to various sections in and around the port, and in what order? Because much of the gasoline aviation fuel to the central part of the U.S. Comes from the Port of Corpus Christi. So, disaster here could affect, cities hundreds, if not thousands of miles away, all throughout the U.S. So, there are so many use cases for where we're going to head next, and bringing in other data sets. As Rex mentioned, bringing in the biometric data, which would be the underwater channel, is high on our list. So that, if I keep zooming in to a vessel, and by the way, these aren't running into each other if you're concerned. But to be able to zoom.
We just avoided a collision there, right? That's fantastic.
See what's happening above and below the water is where we're going to head next. So
wow,
there's lots of use cases and different aspects of engineering into all of these pieces, that make up this digital twin. So this is actually a great example of, why some data sets aren't as reliable. So, you can see the vessel stop. The machine learning is saying basically, look, I've guesstimated as far as this vessel is going to go. For whatever reason, the vessel hasn't updated to run into it. So, no, it's
the Edelweiss.
I hope it's not happening.
Well, this is amazing. Maybe the whole United States will be connected, and cars are headed this way, but all these different industries, we're all connected. And this is just amazing to me.
You may have heard this, like with smart ports.
There you go.
Like smart cities, smart ports. You see all these kind of these smart entities, these smart organizations, and this is part of that, right? When you hear like the smart city approach, it's pervasive, right? Not just for urban areas.
And I think it's probably important for your listeners that this isn't just an Esri type thing. I'm engineering. I'm a CAD person, and what's the advice to people of entering the engineering world is I don't think you can specialize anymore. You need to have knowledge of all of those products to some degree. I'm not an engineer. Technically, I'm not an IT guy, even though I lead an IT group. I'm a business major, by training, but, being able to, as I joke, I color well. So I get a crayon, I connect dots. And so connecting these dots here, use cases, and taking, CAD drawings of this building here, which is our executive building, so that somebody who knows how to build things in 3D can build a detail rendering of this building, so that in a future case, as we're working on our asset management, I can click on an air conditioning unit and pull up, again, real-time data on that air conditioning unit. It was running right or it alerted. What does it look like? The generator that's on the building, et cetera, et cetera. So, there's so many use cases for this technology that I think the analogy is best to anybody who has kids in sports. Coaches will say, what can I do to make my kid really good in sports? I don't think you'll ever hear a coach say he needs to play one sport, just basketball or just baseball or just football. They all say the best athlete, I think, whether it's the best IT or engineering people, have got to learn, some piece of different aspects. You can't just, be an engineer that does nothing but ditches, whether that be above or below the water, right? Because where are you going to place all that dredge material? You're a civil engineer. You're digging a 54-foot trench under the water here. Where does all that material go? Got to figure it out. In some cases,
luckily engineers are good gamers too. So, there's some bleed over there.
Yeah. So this is what all this area is here that you can see. This is all dredge placement. We're literally building new land. The old adage of buy real estate, they're not making it anymore. It's not true. Ports make real estate. So, awesome. In fact, a lot of it's on this bottom part of the channel is all. It's not. It's fitted. Compacted. It's ultimately something will be. So.
Well, I'm blown away. I think this is awesome. Thanks for giving us a tour. We better wrap this up. We could probably spend another 3 hours looking at everything you've got shown here, but appreciate you giving us the demo, giving us a heads up. If our audience wanted to learn more about this project, is there a good place to go to find out more information?
I think the best place right now is Esri's website. And if you look up the Developer Summit from this last year, myself and the Start Log from the Acceleration Agency presented at the keynote of that summit and dives a little bit deeper into the 3D piece, why it is probably the best source for additional information.
Okay. We'll link that up in our show notes, make sure people are aware of it. But if people had some specific questions, maybe they wanted to reach out to either one of you, is there a good way for them to do that?
Sure. My email is dkeach@polka.com.
Okay.
All right. And if you're looking at working with some of our developer tools at Esri, especially our game engine SDKs and our plugins for Unity or Unreal Engine, feel free to reach out to me. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, or you can email me at rhansen, RHANSEN, @esri.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Rex. Thank you, Darrell, for jumping on and sharing your wisdom about this. I am blown away about what the possibilities are with this, and I'm hoping the rest of the world sees that too. But thanks for sharing your thoughts with us today.
Cool.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Isaac.
See ya.
Thank you.